Okay, Year 5, welcome back to your maths lessons. This is moving on our knowledge of fractions and decimals now. So we are now also thinking, as you can see, about thousandths. So, first things first, as always, please take the time now to pause the video and spend 3 to 5 minutes doing your arithmetic fluency practice. Okay, welcome back. Thank you for taking the time to do that. In this lesson, let's start actually by just revisiting a quick bit of equivalent fractions. Okay, so we are going to need to know really keenly how to do equivalent fractions before we can move on with this lesson today. So we've done lots of finding equivalent fractions. If you're still not very confident about it, then there's always that rule to remember. And I'm hoping by now I've said this so many times that this is burnt into your brain. But remember, when we are finding equivalent fractions, whatever we do to the denominator, we must do to the numerator. Okay, so for this first little task, all I want you to do is find any fractions which are equivalent. There are hundreds and hundreds. There is an infinite number of different correct answers. So all you need to do is say, okay, well, I'm going to do this as 20ths. So my 10 multiplied by 2 is 20. So what do I have to do to the numerator? I also have to multiply that by the same thing to get 8. So 4/10 is equal to 8/20. Please take the time now to pause the video and talk through with the person you're working with, if you are working with someone, or if not, just to come up with some equivalent fractions for these before we move on. Okay, welcome back. Because there are, like I said, an infinite amount of correct answers, I can't actually go through and check that your answers are correct at the moment. But what you can do, if you want to check your answers, is just make sure that whatever you did to the denominator, so I multiplied it by 4 to get 100, I did the same to the numerator, okay? You need to make sure that the relationship between your numerators is the same as the relationship between your denominators in order to check your answers. Okay, as always, please take time if you want to stop here at the star words and see if there are any things that you are unsure of, any words that you're not sure about. The new word for us in this lesson will be thousandths. So we're continuing our knowledge of place value, tenths, and hundredths from the previous lesson, and now we are working on thousandths as well. And the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice the relationship between 10, 100, and 1,000, and tenths and hundredths, and you might already have some brainwaves firing about what thousandths might be. Okay, so in the previous lesson, we looked at these Dean's representations here and what they are as numbers, and then what they are as fractions and what they are as decimals. Okay, so the first one has been done for us. We have this Dean's here, and we said it is equal to 1, and we write 1 as a 1 in the ones column. We don't need to write 1.0 or 1.00000 because we would just end up going on forever and ever and ever. All we need to write that is as 1, and we leave the rest of the columns blank. Now we know what 1 is. From our last lesson, we also know what 1/10 is. Now, I'm hoping you recall that we write that as 0.1. No whole ones. We've got none of these whole ones, the big whole ones. We've just got a tenth. This has been split into 10 equal parts, and we write 1/10 as this, and it's equal to 0.1. Same again from last lesson. Now we need to look at these hundredths, and we write that down as a hundredth, as a fraction. And you will remember, of course, that a fraction is 0.01. Now, what do you notice is happening each time we go down 1? What is happening? Well, hopefully you can identify that as we go down, everything is getting 10 times smaller. It is dividing by 10. Oh, thank God that came back. Every time we move down one, it is getting 10 times smaller. And so we can see the Dean's getting 10 times smaller. Now, each time this is getting 10 times smaller as well. It is getting 10 times less each time. What do you notice? So we have 1. We have 1 over 10, 1 over 100. How do you think we're going to represent this Dean as a fraction? Well done if you identified that. We're going to call that 1,000th. 1 as our numerator, 1,000 as our denominator. 1/1000th is if we had one whole and split it into 1,000 equal parts to make up that one whole. Now, how do you think we are going to represent that as a decimal? What do you notice is happening to the 1 each time? Each time we get 10 times smaller. Well done if you're identifying that as we get 10 times smaller, we are moving one place value to the right. So we would write this fraction as 0.001. And as you can see, we have now added an extra column for place value, and that place value column is our thousandths column. So we just filled that out in the last on the last slide. So I just wonder if you want to, you can pause this and have a think about what we would call those numbers. 1, 0.1. What are we going to call the other two as decimals? Well done if you identified it as 0.01 and 0.001. Each time I move one place value to the right, my one digit is getting 10 times smaller. First it was a whole one, then it was a tenth, then it was a hundredth, and now in this last one, it is a thousandth, 1,000th. It may also be worth your while if you are with someone at home. It's always good to try and use the vocabulary as much as you can. So talking about hundredths and thousandths, they're quite difficult things to say, especially getting that bit said. But the more you practice it, the more it will become a part of your maths vocabulary. And that will be really useful for you when you are trying to explain things later on in this lesson and over the course of this unit. Okay, so here we have a thousandth and here we have a hundred. How many times bigger is this hundredth than this thousandth, do you think? Well done if you identified it's 10 times bigger. That's 1,000th, and that is how many thousandths? How each of these equals 1,000th, and how many are there? Well, if you counted all of them, you would remember that you would work out that there are 10. So we know that 10 thousandths is equal to 100th. I would like you to pause the video and do this talk task either on your own or with the person that you're working with to try and work out, do exactly the same. How many times bigger is this than that? Therefore, how many thousandths is equal to a tenth? And how many thousandths is equal to a whole for the bottom one? Okay, welcome back. Well done if you were able to identify that this is 100 times bigger. So 100 thousandths is equal to a tenth. And well done if you identified that this is 1,000 times greater. So 1,000 thousandths is equal to 1. Now, anytime we have a fraction where the numerator and denominator are the same number, that means it is equal to 1. No matter if that is 2 halves or 7 sevenths or 9 ninths, that is equal to 1. The reason for that is, if you think about it logically, we're saying, okay, we've got one whole, let's say a pizza. We always like to work with pizzas when we're doing fractions. And let's say we split that into quarters. And I ate all 4 of the quarters. And I've eaten the whole pizza, haven't I? So when my numerator and denominator are the same number, that means that my fraction is equal to 1. Okay, what I would like you to do now is have a pause here and see if you can work out what this representation in Deans is as a number of thousandths. Okay, so we need to work out how many of each thing we have in each column. So we've got no wholes, so we know our fraction is going to be less than 1. How many tenths do we have? Well done if you identified there were 2. How many hundredths do we have? Well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And how many thousandths do we have? Well, we have 6. So we have the number 0.246. 0.246. 2 tenths, 4 hundredths, and 6 thousandths. Now, how would I write this, do you think, as a number over 1,000? Well done if you were able to identify that. We would write that as 246 thousandths. I've got 2 tenths, 4 hundredths, and 6 thousandths. I'm going to represent that as 246 thousandths. Okay, your independent task is exactly the same as your independent task yesterday, except this time we are going to include some thousandths in there as well. Okay, you can see on questions 6, 5, and 3, I've included some thousandths. Now I can see that I've forgotten to add in the thousandths Deans there, so I will put those in before I upload this to Google Classroom, don't worry, but it will be exactly the same as last time. We're not going to do an example one together. You are going to write the fraction, the decimal, and represent it by copy and pasting the Deans. Any questions? Obviously, please let me or Miss Lobo know. Thank you and have fun.